This is The Recap, a weekly reflection on the sermons of Fellowship Baptist Church in Mainville, Ohio, seeking to help you make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. I'm your host, Ryan Land, and I am here with the preacher of this week's sermon, Brent Wilson. Welcome to another week, Brent.
Another week.
Shout out to Nathan for filling in for me last week while I was at the Southern Baptist Convention.
Stealing my seat.
He did steal your seat. I know. I watched a little bit on the YouTube, is what I just about said. I watched a little bit on the YouTubes, and I saw y'all had switched seats.
Yeah,
which was odd.
it felt odd.
It was odd. It was odd to be listening to the recap in the first place, but then also odd for you to be sitting over here in my seat. Mm-hmm. But thanks for keeping it warm for me. Nathan did a great job.
Yep.
I'll be honest. I only listened to the beginning.
That's all right.
Where y'all talked about me being a legalist. And then I was personally insulted, so I turned it off. That's not true. But you did say that. You did say that. But I was like, wow. I'm not in the room and they're talking about my sins.
Only in reference to your love for Robert's rules.
And let me tell you, not a super fun year for procedural stuff.
No footnotes?
Only one time. I actually did almost get up and make a point of order.
Yeah.
Because we voted on an amendment to something, and the president, Clint Presley, was treating it as if we had voted on the thing itself and was like starting to move on. Mm-hmm. And so I was actually about to go make a point of order that we had actually just voted on the amendment, not on the thing itself. And the parliamentarians corrected him, but which only affirmed me in my desire to be a parliamentarian.
Did y'all
someday.
ever do Robert's rules in school?
No.
We did.
Oh, no way?
Yeah.
Like for what?
I had like a class that was like a sort of like a, not shop, but it was kind of like that sort of thing. Like you would.
No, I would love that class.
We did that for a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That would have been
I didn't like it, but I think in hindsight, going back, I would have loved it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I probably would have loved it then. But Darcy did point this out about that. I'm the guy who, when you play a board game, like I read the rule book like front to back. And then when we're playing with people, I'm like, I don't think you can do that. I think that's against the rules. Yeah. Not because it's like, I just want to play the game fairly.
Yeah. Nathan is like that too, though.
You know? So it was funny. I read an article recently that was like, it was like, your games of Monopoly can go much faster if you pay attention to this commonly ignored rule. And I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder what the commonly ignored rule is. And so I read it, and it's this dad writing this article about how I was on Park Avenue and I didn't want to buy it. And so I said, I'm not going to buy it. And my son
has to be auctioned off.
I was playing it, and I was like, what do you mean commonly ignored rule? I was like, that's a very clear rule in the rule book.
No,
that if you don't purchase the thing you land on the first time, you don't purchase the thing you land on, it goes to auction and anyone can buy it. Yeah. And I'm like, this is why y'all's games of Monopoly are taking 3 hours, because it probably takes 3 hours just to buy every property.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, no, you should, by the time you've gone all the way around the board once, every property should be bought.
Pretty much, pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm glad you knew.
Oh, I did.
I read that article. I was like, yeah. Duh. It's in the rule.
I've read the rules.
It's not a footnote. It's like, there's just a clear rule.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that people don't play that way.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. All right. Well, anyway, enough about rules. Let's talk about conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of a virgin.
You're not going to do an icebreaker?
No, I have one.
Okay,
It's related. It's related.
Okay.
So,
real quick, I've been watching this. I showed you this conversation I've been watching with these two British guys. Mm-hmm. And
does it make you want to do this whole thing in a
British
British accent?
How funny would it be if we all did? But I like how slow they talk and deliberate. And they're like, I don't even want to attempt it.
Alex is always very deliberate with his words.
And never riled up. But even the other guys, like, okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
You're not Scarlett.
Yeah, my daughter, oh man, she's got the British accent down. Oh, look, Aiden, it's a Grater's. That's what she said the other day.
That's so funny.
But
anyway. She came up to me on Sunday and I said, are you British? She was talking like that. I said, are you British? She said, no, I'm Hermione. Which is so funny. No, but here's my icebreaker question. Okay. So we're going to talk about the hypostatic union, Jesus being God and man, divine and human, all those things, divine nature, human nature. But was there ever anything in school or just in life that other people around you like could seemingly like comprehend and get, and you could not? And you were just like, I do not get this. I do not understand. Like I can't even wrap my mind around it.
Math.
Okay, like all math or just
algebra particularly.
Yeah.
So algebra stuff.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, you just solve for X. Yeah, you just solve for X.
You just solve for X.
Yeah. Oh, you just do it backward and just divide it, do it backward. Like,
that's so funny. So mine's also math related. We did it in math class. And I actually think in hindsight, it was just like kind of, I don't want to put this person on blast, but just like kind of poor teaching. But we were talking about logic. Like particularly, it was a particular kind of logic. I can't remember what it was. So
inductive or deductive or something like that?
Yeah, it had like a proper noun. I can't remember what it was. But it was particularly, I think, kind of like the kind of coding logic. I don't really remember. But like I remember one of the things that was like one of the questions was like birds fly. And I was like, yes, true. Birds fly.
Yeah.
And then the teacher was like, no, it's false. And I was like, why is it false? And she was like, because not all birds fly. So you can't say birds fly is not a true statement.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, no. I was like, the statement is not all birds fly. The statement is birds fly. And do birds fly? Yes, they do. But like, I mean, everyone in the class was like, no, Ryan, it's because all birds can't fly.
So the claim wasn't that all birds fly.
No, I know. And that's exactly what I was. I was like, guys, no. I was just like, I stand. Dude, that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like. I felt like Martin Luther. But I was like, I literally, like, I just failed that, like week or whatever.
You were right.
Like, I was just like, I do not.
Did you convert them?
No. I did.
The teacher didn't get it?
No.
Bro.
But it wasn't. She was very kind to me. She was like, no, Ryan, I understand what you're saying and how what you're saying is correct in a sense. She's like, in this particular like thing of logic that we're doing, it's like if there is something,
there's an exception.
Yeah, the generalized statement cannot be true. And I was just like, I could not get it.
Yeah.
I was like, I was so just like idiotic. And this thing, I just like my brain just did not work that way.
Yeah.
And so it's truly the dumbest I think I've ever felt was through like that week of math class in high school. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course birds fly. There were a bunch of other ones. Yeah. I kept saying, I think I kept saying like, well, do all humans breathe? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, well, if I hold my breath, I'm not breathing, am I?
Yeah.
It's like, so do humans breathe? No. According to your logic. Yeah. So, all right. Well, it's just good to, I think it's good to, when we come to talk about the incarnation to come at it, knowing there are just some things like we just don't get.
Yeah.
So let's go through kind of your main points. And
it is interesting to say.
Oh, go ahead.
That these things that we quote unquote don't get, they are logically consistent things.
No, for sure.
They're just difficult or impossible to comprehend things.
Yeah.
But not logically inconsistent. That's an important thing to know, I think.
Explain the difference between those things, if you can. Like, that's kind of complicated, but I think it's helpful.
It's not that we're saying that the Trinity or the hypostatic union or whatever is a square circle that is logically impossible.
A married bachelor. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Those things are illogical. Squared circle.
So those are
bachelor.
logically inconsistent, illogical. We're saying it is logically consistent, even though we may not quite fully grasp it. Right? Like you might speak of this is not necessarily logic, but you might speak of the vastness of the universe. I can't really comprehend how vast it is, but I know it is that big or whatever, right? Even though I can't quite get my brain around it. I think in the same way, the hypostatic union is not a contradiction. It's not a illogical statement or belief, but I just can't quite comprehend it all.
No, for sure. I think that's really helpful. So we're gonna go. You got 3 points. Also, there's some subpoints in there that I thought were particularly helpful, and so I want to talk about those a little bit. But I do think our tendency in a conversation like this is to lean theological.
Oh yeah.
And so I think there will be a lot of that. So
that's okay. That's what podcast is for.
I hope that's of interest to you. My hope is that we can find some devotional or applicational ways to think about this too. But first, let's start out. You started out the whole sermon, talking about, I'm trying to remember your your opening illustration that you were just like, y'all like that? Like you just brought attention to the fact that you were like connecting the tissue.
My birthday situation with Nathan?
Yes, about how he brought what did you say?
I was like he humbled me. He brought me low.
He brought me down.
Make me older than I am.
That was such a funny way because you just addressed the fact that like the that's always such a hard. This is like a little technical sermon writing thing.
Yeah.
That's always such a hard transition to make, like from your opening illustration into the content of the
I'm
sermon.
setting up the sermon with this. Yeah.
So I actually love just like the throwing in the towel of just being like, and there you go, y'all like that?
Yeah. It's like I know this was cheesy. It was just funny.
I loved that. So,
but it felt a little bit like, you know how we make fun of like there's that Twitter account that's like it will take some cultural reference and you know. Well, let me tell you really about.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one.
What's a good example of that?
I'm just trying to think of something that's gone on recently. I don't know. I can't think of one. But yeah, it's always some random thing. It's like, let me tell you about a real guy that, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So you started out, your first point was the power of God. There is nothing impossible with God. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I can already see the look on your face. If you're listening to the podcast, Brent just has this smirk on his face.
Y'all gotta watch it. All right.
Yeah.
Watching it is way more
Actually,
entertaining.
the most popular way to consume podcasts now is on like YouTube.
Yeah. That's how I do it mostly.
Yeah.
Not exclusively,
Not
but
me.
a lot.
But go ahead. Why are you smirking?
Well, so, you know, we've been trying to disciple Josh, our media guy over here.
He's here. He's in the room.
He's right there. About, you know, when he first started, he talked about how, you know, God can do anything. And he said that, you know, at a lunch table with us, and we were like, well,
Yeah, two MDivs, right?
He's like, well, not
Bible
really.
colleges.
And he's like, what do you mean? And so he explained how God can't do it. God can't sin. God can't do anything illogical.
Can't create a married bachelor. Yeah.
Can't do any of that. And he was like, well, yes, he can. And so we can't argue about that. And so it was funny on Sunday morning when Josh was working on my slides and, you know, this idea that nothing is impossible with God. Josh was like, wait a minute. I was like, yeah,
He's like, this is what I've been trying to say.
It's like, you need to put a little asterisk by it. And it's like, it's true that nothing is impossible with God from the sense that he is all powerful and can do anything within the realm of reason, logic, and his nature, his character. So he can't sin. He can't do things that are illogical.
Now, why is it important when we talk about conception by the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary that we start from this place? Because where we end where you land this sermon is very different, I think, than talking about the power of God. Why is it important that we start with the power? You know,
well, I don't know if it's. I think about what you mean by start. Is what I want to say.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning of your sermon, it's like, well, it depends what you mean by beginning. I mean, the first part.
Yeah, I think that, this idea that God is initiating, and it's his power that allows, if that's the right word, him to invade space and time, to initiate a plan, to create a virgin who could give birth, to make that happen. His power allowing for the plan of salvation to be enacted. And so it's not as if God is throwing some situations together hoping that you know, it's like when you read an adventure story, right? And you've got the good guys and they're trying to overcome evil, and the question is always, will they do it? Will they overcome? That's not what God's doing. It's not like, man, I wonder if he'll win the day.
There's actually no tension.
There's no tension.
Yeah.
Like, God's got it. And so the fact that he can, you know, do the thing, create the virgin who will give birth to the God man, that's his power. And he initiates it. It was part of that point there, right? That he sets it in motion. He leans down, he gets his hands dirty. He takes the first step. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then also you talked about within this point, you know, the fact that you kind of talked about, I can't remember who it was, this like early modern or late modern.
The Boltman?
Yeah, Boltman.
Yeah.
Wanting to, hey, let's just get rid of this virgin birth, all this unbelievable stuff.
All the divine intervention stuff.
And you, I don't know if you use this from him or if what, but it's like, so we can get to the core message.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah. It's like, let's get rid of all this other stuff so we can get to the core message of the Bible. What, two questions, right? Like in his day, right? What is he trying to do, like kind of more broadly? Explain that a little bit. And then how do we see people doing that today?
Yeah.
Both people who we would really disagree with, but then also in our kind of our own lives.
Yeah. I don't want to speak too much about him particularly because I don't know that I know enough about him to speak with authority.
But there's a certain movement at the beginning of the 19th century.
The general idea.
Sorry, the 20th, at the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The general idea was modern man who is scientific minded and reasoned is not going to believe in the gospel if they have to also believe in these things that seem anti-scientific. And so why don't we stop preaching and pushing and making it a first tier issue that these things are true and happened, and let's just get to the basics of, I was going to say the death and resurrection, but I don't know what they would say about the resurrection, right? It was like, but let's, the love of God, whatever that core message is that they would say.
I think one thing you talked about, like Jesus is not just a guy to be imitated.
Yeah.
That was very popular for these early 20th century people to say like, hey, we want to bring peace to the world. We want to be like Jesus. Yeah. So to get more people to do that, it's like, let's just get rid of all this kind of other stuff.
Yeah. That's kind of that. And you said, how do we see that now?
Like if you're interested in that, I've got a great book for you to read. It's called Christianity and Liberalism, which we think about liberalism being this like new thing or like whatever, written in 1923. And it's by a guy who was a fundament. This whole kind of era of church kind of conflict or history or whatever. It's called the modernist fundamentalist debate. The modernists are like this Boltzmann guy trying to say, hey, let's get rid of all the stuff so we can appeal to the modern man. And the fundamentalists are like us saying, no, we're going to stick to the fundamentals of the faith, which is that God can work outside of nature or through nature, supranaturally. And so that book is really interesting, is about J. Gresham Machen, a guy, a fundamentalist in the 1920s, writing directly kind of against this idea. Yeah. And kind of makes the point that you make. You have this quote, when we try to make the gospel more palatable by stripping away the supernatural, you don't get a more accessible gospel, you get a powerless one. Yeah. And that's his point in that book. Yeah. Is that it's like, you've actually not made the gospel any more interesting. You've just made a different gospel now that doesn't work.
Let me just say this, and we can dive into the modern thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you've taken church history more recently than me. When you talk about this modern fundamentalist movement, when we use the word fundamentalist now, we typically kind of negative.
Okay.
But then that's actually, I believe in the fundamentals of the faith. It was actually a good thing then.
Well, so there's actually a fundamentalist controversy in the late 20th century where you get the term evangelical. Yeah. So you have fundamentalists who are separatists. They don't want to have anything to do with the outside culture. You have evangelicals who want to stick to the fundamentals of the faith, but engage the outside world, the non-believing world. And so that is where that split. So, but there were no evangelicals like prior to like the 1960s, 50s. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good clarification, because a lot of times you hear I was like this when I was reading this book. I was like, I don't like
we don't like them.
We don't like fundamentalists. They're jerks. They're mean, right? They're sticking in their holy huddles or whatever, right? And so they're fundamentalists. Yeah, that's a good
believe in the fundamentals.
The fundamentals of the faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Like the virgin birth.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's fast forward. It's 2025. How do we see people doing the same things with Orthodox Christian belief, with right Christian doctrine? Yeah. To maybe have more mass appeal. Yeah. Well, let me. But maybe like saturate or oversaturate or whatever.
Let me give you kind of some of the concepts I've seen, and then let me show you, just kind of tell you one story where I kind of saw this firsthand. So conceptually, it's like, hey, let's not talk about the blood. Okay, let me tell you about a controversy. You may remember this. It was Easter, I think, 2 years ago, in a church that we're obviously not big fans of. And it's like, y'all are going to make me defend this church. Charlotte, North Carolina, what's his name?
Furtick?
Furtick. Their church kind of got under hot water because all of their Easter like promo stuff, like the cards are going to hand out or whatever, like didn't say the resurrection on it, or it was just like come to Easter, right? Invite cards. People are like, see, they're getting rid of it. It's like, well, no, this is just the invite card. Like this doesn't have to spell out the gospel.
Was that thing like don't judge a book by its cover?
Yeah,
remember that?
And so
you know what else doesn't have the resurrection on the front of it? The Bible,
right?
It just says the Bible.
Yeah, and so. But anyway, but that's the idea, right? That, okay, churches are going to, hey, let's not talk about sin. Let's not talk about.
It reminds me of, not like, this was not like a theological controversy at our church or whatever, but there was a Christmas Eve service. I think your first Christmas Eve service here.
Oh, yeah.
Where you talked about blood.
A lot of it.
A lot. And people were like,
it's referred to as the bloody sermon.
It's Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, move that from Christmas to Easter, baby.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we talking about blood so much? So anyway, that's what it made me think of. Keep going.
But so yeah, like, let's not talk so much about the blood. Let's not talk so much about wrath. I remember there was one guy I met when I was a youth pastor came out of a service, and our pastor was talking about the Lord's Supper, and he had poured juice, from a cup into another cup. It was like God's poured out his wrath, and
what was his name? Jonathan Edwards.
No, it was like Sam Hinkson. But
saw him last week.
Did you?
Yep.
Nice. And the guy came out and he said, "Hey," he said something to the effect of, "I don't think we need to do that. Like, really talk about all that wrath and judgment stuff. We just should talk about love, right?" And so there's this idea of talk about love and acceptance and all these things without wrath. The irony is you lose the love.
The love doesn't sound that the love doesn't sound that amazing if you don't understand.
Yeah, it's
the
like,
wrath.
Yeah. It's like if you love someone, there is wrath that comes. Like if I love you and someone hurts you, I'm gonna go get them, right? Yeah. Like, but
you better.
That's right. And so just like, let's remove stuff that's going to cause people to not want to come. And so today, that could be, hey, we want to be inclusive. Like, let's remove the idea that homosexuality is a sin or whatever like that. Whatever sins you want to talk about. Let's remove those things and so that's kind of the modern thing. Some of the silly ways that I see this, have seen this happen, it can be less about removing something and more, I don't know, let me just tell you the story and we'll kind of talk through it. So I remember I was in this meeting for a community youth event. Like, all these churches were getting together. Hey, we're going to have this event. And
this was not here.
This was in Kentucky years ago. And the point of the event, this is important, was evangelism. Like, we wanted to, reach teenagers with the gospel. And so we're just like, hey, what do we want to do? And I remember the ideas were like, let's get a BMX group here. Like, let's get a big half pipe and get guys on. It was all kind of ideas like that. And so it was like, hey, let's have all this fun stuff, which I'm for fun, right? I love fun. But there was no talk of like, well, how are we going to communicate the gospel to them? It was just about what's going to get them there. Yeah. And so if your first thought is what's going to get them there, you've missed the boat. Yeah. The first thought needs to be, here's the message we got to get to them. And then, okay, what are some barriers maybe we want to remove? And the barriers may be things like, I don't know, the aesthetic of the event or a stigma or something, right? But we're not going to like, well, and so the gospel, unadulterated, in its purity, and it's what the Bible says, is offensive, but is the only thing that can save people. And so our job isn't to remove the offense. Our job is only to remove exterior barriers, right? So like, whatever that may be, not the content.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And I think there's like, I think there's kind of two parts to this. Is like, you've got sort of like the theological side, right? Where you're taking, like, you're dealing specifically with beliefs, right? So I think you mentioned, like the inclusion of same-sex couples or, doing what it reminds me of is the Anglican Church is currently going through a controversy where the Bishop of Canterbury, who's like the Pope, the Archbishop of Canterbury, kind of was like, okay, we're not going to perform same-sex weddings, but we'll bless them. Right. Which I'm not sure what the distinction is because I'm not Anglican, but it's like, we'll bless them. Right. And it's like just that little, like what he's trying to do is like stay like relevant or be palatable or whatever, and kind of have this middle position. But the reasoning is nothing to do with scripture. It's to do with, am I appealing to the watching world, right? And so
modern sensibilities.
Yeah. And so, I think female pastors is one that people, it's like, oh, well, we want to we want people to see that women are celebrated and loved here. And so we're going to put this in this office they weren't created for.
Yeah.
And so I think there's lots of theological things that you can do and try to cut corners, right, to be more appealing. And specifically, I think when it comes to the creed, if you're doing that, I think the women pastor and some other things like is a little, second tier issue. The creed we talked about being first tier issues. Like when you start trying to cut corners on first tier issues, it's like you're like in really dangerous water, right? It's like, because there's actually a theological reason that Jesus was conceived by the Holy Spirit. There's a theological reason that he was born of a virgin.
Yep.
There's theological reasons he was a bodily resurrection, not a spiritual one, right? And so you have that level. But then also I think the one you're talking about is when you're adding stuff, like there's no harm in that, but it's almost like when you're like cutting like we have like this laundry detergent, and it's like a concentrate.
Yeah, you got to dilute it.
You got to dilute the concentrate. It's like, when does it stop being the concentrate, the bleach or the cleaner or whatever, and just start being like water with a little bit of stuff in it, And so it's like, if I put one little drop of that concentrate in a big thing and then put all this water in it, it's like, it's mostly just water.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think sometimes to be palatable, like the church, specifically youth things, try to be like, we're going to do this. We're going to have this big glass of awesome water, and it's going to be so fun, and so many kids are going to come to it. And then we're going to put a little droplet of evangelism in there. Man, and it's good. Look, it's Christian. It's like, it's a church event now.
Was it you talking about the other day about like when youth parents pick up their kids, that often in youth group, they say, did you have fun? Or
no, that's what I mean.
Fun? I heard this somewhere, and it was like, the question shouldn't be, or the answer shouldn't be, oh, I had fun, or did you have fun? It was like, what'd you learn?
Yeah, for sure.
So
what do you know more about Jesus?
Yeah.
Because of this or not?
Which I'll say, it's like when I pick Eden up from youth group.
Did you have fun?
We may talk about the fun she had, but she's also talking about, we learned this, we talked about this, It's like,
oh, that's good.
So.
In a British accent?
No, that's Scarlett.
That's Scarlett. That's right.
Eden's British accent, terrible.
Oh, yikes. Don't listen to this, Eden. We're getting put on blast. And so I think safeguarding, those things, because we don't want to communicate that we think the gospel's embarrassing or it needs to be covered over or justified by a BMX.
Yeah.
Like, it's like sometimes maybe this is a hot take. Sound the hot take alarm. There's a guy at the SBC, there's like a big exhibit hall, and he was like a Christian comedian. He's like, I'll come to your church and I'll do like a comedy set, and then I'll share the gospel, and like you can invite people that come to this night of comedy or whatever. Stand-up comedy is very popular right now. And I was just kind of like that's not what I want to get people in the door with. Yeah. What's that saying?
What you win them with is what you keep them with.
Yeah. Or
what you win them to.
That's what I've heard. It's the same thing, but what you win them with is what you win them to.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if we win you with a night of comedy, and then you come next Sunday and the pastor's not that funny, you're not going to stick around long.
Which he's not.
No, I think he's pretty funny. I got some genuine. You know who was funny on Sunday was Nathan.
Oh yeah.
Where my dad's in the house. So good. So funny. But yeah. And so I don't, in youth ministry, I don't want to win them with fun games and cool events and trips. And it's like, doesn't mean we don't do them, but I always want them to be clear, like, hey, what we're about is worshiping Jesus, learning about who he is from the scriptures.
Yep.
And then it's like the expectation is set. And so I think, you undermine the power of God, the power of the gospel, when you start to feel like, oh, I've got to make this palatable or whatever.
Yeah.
So then you move from the power of God to the grace of God. So you said God doesn't leave us in our helpless state. He initiates a plan of salvation. There's that initiation language. What do you have to say further on that?
I think it's Jonah. He just says, after he's run away and he's in the whale, he says, salvation is of the Lord. Mm-hmm. Salvation is the Lord's. And I think when you think about God initiating, you're reminded that God has done this from beginning to end. We say often around here that you contributed one thing to your salvation, and that was the sin needed to be forgiven. Mm-hmm. And so if you go back to Adam and Eve, like God initiates it, like, hey, he's laid down this promise. I mean, you can go back further than that, right? Like when you begin to even understand that God has ordained sin and the fall, and he's also ordained the plan of salvation.
Go back further than Adam. What's this guy talking about?
God planned redemption before he created the world, right? And so, but they fall immediately. It's not like he's got to think about it for a while. It's immediately, I got a plan, right? For thousands of years, it's going to take to accomplish it, but I got a plan. Mm-hmm. And then everything is working out. I heard one time a pastor asked me, where's the middle of the Bible? And I'm like, Psalms, whatever. And he's like, no, it's Genesis 3:15, right? It's like, you've got, everything's good, everything breaks, here's the promise, and everything else is just the
working out of the
promise. And so God takes the initiative there. He takes the initiative and sending us the scriptures.
I think Jonah is such a great example because he's literally running away from God.
God's chasing him.
It's not even like he's sorry.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It's like, and God still has grace on him.
Yeah. Dude, you know what my first Andrew Peterson song I ever knew was?
What?
The Chasing song.
I don't even know if I know that song.
David, he chased God's own heart, and all I ever seem to chase is me. And he just goes through all these biblical characters.
I don't know this song.
God, God was chasing Jonah. We're going to listen to it after.
Okay.
It was like one of his hits that made it to the radio.
Go listen to it, folks.
And then actually listen to his better stuff.
No, I need to listen to that. I've never heard that song. But yeah, I think that's so important. And well, we'll get to this in a second, but that, you think about all these ways God is like direct. Well, we think, even I just met today, we think God is like directly working in these situations, right? Sending the fish or, but we're like, but God doesn't directly work, in my life.
Yeah.
But it's like, actually, no, he more direct. Those were more indirect than the way he worked in your life. Because for those, he didn't go down to Jonah. He didn't go down to, David or whoever. But for you, he actually entered the story.
Space time in it,
He entered the mess. Mm-hmm. And so that, I almost talked about this at generosity, kind of knowing you were talking about this. It's like, even if Jesus didn't die on the cross or die this like brutal, horrific death, it's like, even just the incarnation is a sacrifice, is a suffering.
Yeah.
For Jesus, right? That like he existed in perfection.
Right.
And for eternity past, and is now severing that in a way that he's never experienced before.
Right.
And so that even the incarnation itself is a kind of suffering.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the incarnation. Why does Jesus need to be born or conceived by the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary? Why does the incarnation have to happen in the way it happened?
Yeah, because if Jesus is going to be a blameless, perfect sacrifice, right? Like all the lambs of the Old Testament pointing to him, they got to be blameless, they got to be spotless, they got to be pure. All these things. Can't have a jacked up leg, right? They've got to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Picturing the only thing that can make a sacrifice for sin is one who doesn't have to make sacrifice for himself, right?
Or else it wouldn't be a sacrifice,
right? And so he's got to be blameless, so he can take on the punishment of someone else. He has no punishment to take himself. Mm-hmm. But the only way he can do that is to be his. I mean, when we're born in sin, right? David says in the Psalms, "It was in sin my mother conceived me," and so from the moment we are conceived, we are in our father Adam, and are destined for hell based on Adamic sin, Adam's sin. Yeah. And so Jesus, just by being born, would have that.
Yep.
And so the only way around that is to get around the one that is passed through, which is the Father. And so he needs to be, conceived by someone who's not an earthly father, and he needs to be born from a woman to become a human, but not have the stain of the passed down sin.
Bless you. Why? So I think you've talked about why he needs to be blameless, right? Why he needs to be sinless. That's why he needs to be conceived of the Holy Spirit. But why couldn't Jesus have just kind of like appeared on the scene? Why couldn't he have just emerged from the clouds?
We wouldn't be human.
Okay. Right? So why is that important?
Yeah. So only a human can be the substitute for other humans.
Yeah. It's like federal headship.
Yeah. So Adam represented us in the garden. Jesus represents us on earth.
Yeah.
Right. And so
in the second garden after the tomb.
In the second garden. Yeah. Or even think about the wilderness, right? The 40-year, there's a reason Israel spends 40 years in the wilderness, failing God, being tempted and failing. There's a reason Jesus spends exactly 40 days in the wilderness to say, hey, I'm the true Israel, the true son of God, the true man of God, who, though in the wilderness for 40 days, was tempted and yet did not sin. Yeah.
Here's some practical Bible reading, kind of like devotional application of this. Is that's like it's one that understanding federal headship and the representation of one for the many is key to understanding David and Goliath.
Yes.
Because you don't understand it, if you don't understand federal headship, you think it's just about a young, scrappy guy who had enough faith that he was able to win his battles, and you can be just like him if you have enough faith.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. It's about the one going in for the many.
The anointed king.
Defeating the one draped in snakeskin. Beheading the one in...
in two armies, and one, it's going to be one-on-one. The winner, it's as if the whole army fought.
Yeah, it's like ABBA. The winner takes it all.
Yep.
And so... do you get that reference?
No, I was just going to move on. I was like, I don't know what that means.
It's all about old heads will understand. Oh. It's an ABBA song.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a young person thing.
No. Right. I don't know young kids' music. My dad was a radio disc jockey in the 70s. I know that music.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and so understanding Adam as our federal head, David as the federal head for Israel, and then ultimately Jesus as the federal head for humanity, is because it's the only... I think I wrote in my notes, humanity's sacrifice had to be divine.
Yeah.
Therefore, Jesus had to be conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
For it to be applied, Jesus had to be human. Therefore, he was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
Because he had to be both. And it's how you accomplish both.
Yeah. I want to clarify one thing you said, and I'm just thinking about this. Jesus is federal head, not for humanity.
Oh, yeah. This is a good point.
But for believers.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting passage. There's a couple passages that say something to the effect of, as death came through one man, right? All will be made alive through one man, right? Yeah. All are righteous through one man, right? And the all there isn't. It's not a universalism. It's not all of humanity, but all who place their faith in him.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I like to explain this because kids will be like, "Why is it fair that I get held accountable for Adam's sin?" And so it's I think I could walk through theologically. It's like, well, there's a curse and the world's broken. But what I like to say is because you actually want to be held accountable for Adam's sin. You want a federal head because the only way you can be cleared of your sin is through the federal head of Jesus.
The interesting thing about that is that's such a Western thing to be upset that one person could represent you. We're so individualistic. It's not always been that way. We were very comfortable with the one representing the many. And you look through kingdoms, right? Israel is... However the king is, God treats all of Israel based on how that king acts. If he's righteous or unrighteous, it flows down. Yeah. And we even somewhat today still have this, right? Like we tell our kids, hey, you behave when you're out there because you represent the family, right? One family member goes down and does something crazy, they're all crazy.
Yeah. Right? Well, it's I don't know that your kids have ever said this, but it's reminding me of a talk at TGC where a guy talked about how his family, was from an Asian country, I can't remember which one, but how they did not have this like individualistic idea, but he did because he was an immigrant to America, so he thought very differently from his dad, and his dad would tell him like, "Hey, you need to go clean the living room."
Yeah.
He's like, "None of that stuff's mine."
Yeah.
He's like, "It's not about if it's yours. It's like it's our house."
Yeah.
It's like, so you.
He says this line. He says, "You don't exist, or the family doesn't exist for you.
Yes,
you exist, for the family."
Yeah, that's what it was. But it's like, so basically think about your house, like you make your kids clean.
Yeah.
It's like none of them are like, but this isn't my toy. I'm not picking this up.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a very Western idea that it's just like, I'm responsible for my stuff and my stuff alone. And then the far swing of that is this federal headship saying that, no, actually you're not responsible. The one in authority over you is responsible. And we don't want that until we see it's the only way.
Yeah. And
to be clear to
it
ourselves.
reminds me of this fascinating story, Sodom and Gomorrah. And everyone always focuses on, it get blown up. But right before that, Abraham is walking with this angel of the Lord, who is Jesus. And
I think we've already done this song and dance on the podcast.
and they're like, he's like, hey, would you save it if there were 50 righteous people in the city? Or if there were 50 federal heads, right? Who could be righteous on it? He's like, yeah, what about 40? Well, yeah, what about 30? Yeah. And he stops. And it's begging the question, but would you save it for one?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, because he does eventually. It's Jesus. But we want a federal head.
That's
because
good. That'll preach.
It has.
Okay. And then, so you got the power of God, you got the grace of God, and then ultimately you landed on the humility of God, that God lowered himself to rescue us.
Yeah.
Expand on that.
I don't know if people think like this or not, but start this up talking about, when you think about God, or even like the gods of myth, like the Greek gods, whatever, like you don't think of them and think of, man, what humility, right? You typically think of power and might and being jealous and when you think of the Greek gods, almost like insecure, right? And whatever. Humility is not an attribute we typically give to them. And even when you think of just Yahweh of the Old Testament, right? He says he's a jealous God. You see him wielding power. You see him blowing people up. You see him.
Well, it's like where he's residing. There's all this like smoke and fire.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When Moses just sees the back of his head, he's all sunburnt, right? So you don't think, man, humility here. But that's exactly what we see in the fruition of his plan. We see him coming on. And I don't know if it's connected with people, but the limbo illustration for me makes a lot of sense because
it was funny to me when you're like, you remember Limbo? And I was like, we played like last week.
I know. But the short people don't have to go down as far. The taller you are, the further you have to travel to get to the same place as the short people. Well, God is higher up and further up than anyone else ever existed by magnitude. And so he has to come further to get just as low as we are. And he doesn't come just to where he comes to the form of a servant, to death, even death on a cross. And so he has traveled so far to get so low. And so the amount of humility that is off the chart, right? So it's a big deal.
Yeah. You mentioned the form thing. I want to talk about this for a second. Unless you have anything more to say about humility, this is going to be a little bit.
No, he's humble.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think that you said that was helpful about this, I'll say this before we move on, is you talked about how every other religion is God's up here.
Yeah.
What are you going to do in your life to either get there or get as close as possible?
Yeah.
Right. You're going to move up the ladder, the religious ladder, whatever. You're going to do good. You're going to check all the boxes, right? This is Mormonism, right? They're like, there's a cosmic checklist of all the good things you can do and all the bad things you can do.
Yeah.
And so, get a high score essentially.
Yeah.
And God will rescue you and give you your own plan or whatever. I don't know. But that's how all religions are, do this, do this thing and do these things, don't do these things. And if you do good enough, even if your bad outweighs your good, right? But still do good, then God's got you.
Yeah.
Christianity is the only one to say it's like, you actually can't do anything to get up to God.
Yeah.
That he has to come to you.
Yeah.
And so that's like goes back to your second point about he's the one that initiates.
Yeah.
Is that we're not the ones that do anything.
Yeah.
Our good works are nothing.
He comes down. Yep.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the Tower of Babel too, right? It's like we're trying to build ourselves up to God. And it's like, if you think about, way back then, the tallest thing they could build, I don't know how tall it was, 100 foot, 200 foot, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Not even getting close to heaven.
Yeah.
The highest thing we could build today, whatever that is, not even getting
the
close.
Burj Khalifa, isn't that the tallest building?
Is
in the
it
world? in India?
No, it's in that that Middle Eastern country that's like super like looks like futuristic.
Well, I don't know. I think that's what Tom Cruise climbs in like Mission Impossible 4. The Burj Khalifa.
Gosh, what is that place called?
Sri Lanka.
No,
I'm just naming countries.
But anyway, it's like that tallest building is not even close, right? And so God knocks it down and say, hey, the only way you're going to get up here is if I come get you.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay, this is the question I was going to ask. Talk about God, Jesus taking on the form. So the Philippians text.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually a kind of confusing text. Can be a confusing text for people. So Philippians 2:6-7. I'm picking up in the middle of a sentence, but who, though he was in the form of God, okay, exclamation point there. I think there's a tricky language right there. Did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. There's that humility we're talking about. But emptied himself. I think there's the second exclamation point. Like, what does that mean? By taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. Okay. Did Jesus take a new form?
Well,
was the form of God? It says though he was in the form of God. Like, what does it mean? The form of God. What does that mean? Did he morph? Did he what's that mean? The form of God. It sounds close to heresy to me. Like it sounds,
It depends on what you mean by form. I'm trying to. Do you remember the Greek word?
No, but I just heard someone talk about it, and he didn't use the Greek, but he kind of talked about what it meant.
Yeah.
You want me to go look at it?
I'm trying to remember.
Essentially the image, I think.
Yeah.
It's like how we talk about the image of God.
Yeah. Form is not the best translation, if memory serves.
Let's just do a little Greek interlinear right here.
Okay. He's pulling up the Greek, folks.
Also, here's a fun fact about this text that I just learned. This is maybe Philippians 2 might be the oldest piece of New Testament writing we have.
It's like a hymn.
Paul's referencing a hymn or a poem or something, and because he predates the Gospels, this might be the oldest. Okay, I found it. This might be the oldest piece of New Testament writing.
Yeah.
So this is why one thing I was listening to about this before your sermon, was talking about how in the Da Vinci Code, they talk about how, well, no one said Jesus was God before the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. And it's like, actually, no, the oldest piece of New Testament writing we have talks about how Jesus was God. Yeah. So it's just interesting. Okay. Morphe.
Yeah.
And it only happens in Mark and Philippians. But what I listened to was like, it does not mean like
transform.
Yeah, like a it's not that Jesus is just like taking on the form of God.
Like he's not really that, he's just putting on a costume.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what can trip people up, is that it's like, though he was in the form of God, it's like, oh, what?
Like it's like more of that, his form.
Yeah.
Like we were formed. His form is God. Like in some way that your form is human, or the form of this is square or whatever.
Yeah.
Like form is think of like a plastic form, like that you would pour something into to form it to that shape, right? His form is God.
Is divine,
Yeah.
right? And so his image, right, is one of divinity.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting about this verse is like I think you can take that part, like the form of God, and be like, oh, see, Jesus was just taking on a form. He wasn't actually God. But it says, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. It's like,
which is the thing to be held on to.
You wouldn't talk about someone who was just pretending to be something or temporarily something, not counting equality with that thing a thing to be grasped, right? Like, if
I'm pretending to be that thing, I want to hold on to it.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's like you have like your honorary like team captain of an NFL team, right? It's like they're in the form. I'm doing air quotes for podcast listener, for audio only listeners. They're in the form of a player, like they're an honorary. It's like, but they don't count. They would not count equality with the team, something to be grasped. It's like, yeah, well, of course not. They're not a real player. It's like the context of the verse only makes sense when the form of God means God, very God.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus is God, but he doesn't count equality with God, the Father, a thing to be grasped. And so it actually only makes sense when you're talking about the form is being actually God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what about emptying himself? So there's another part. It's like, okay, is this heresy? Did Jesus remove some of his divinity to become human?
No.
But Brent, it says he emptied himself.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that.
I'm being a listener.
Yeah. Yeah. So he is lower. This is where I quoted you quoting Tom Schreiner.
Yeah.
Right. That it's subtraction by addition, right? He's adding something that is lower than what he is. And so he is adding something, not negative, but something humble, something small, something feeble, something weak. He's becoming a servant. He's becoming a human servant. And so he's emptying himself he is not removing, but he is doing something that is going to not give him the glory he deserves because he's taking on something that is less.
Yeah. Well, it's like, that's what I like to say is like, it's the verse says he emptied himself. Well, by doing what? By taking something.
Yeah.
That's not emptying yourself. That's adding to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's adding something that's actually below him. It's like if, I'm trying to think of another example. If the CEO of a company were to go put on the janitor's uniform, people would treat him as if it's undercover boss. Remember that show?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like, and so they treat him not with the respect that he has earned, right? Presuming the CEO is like a good guy or whatever. And so it's like, yeah, he's actually added something to himself that makes him, not given, like you just said, like given the glory of the honor. So, okay, here's a question. Did Jesus in eternity past have a body?
No. Now, I would say he has some temporary bodies sometimes. So God walks with Adam and Eve in the garden. Abraham, Moses sees him, Jacob wrestles him, all these things. And so
the fourth man in the fire.
And so that's God. And most theologians would say that, that's a Christophany, right? This is Jesus, the one who would eventually take on flesh permanently, temporarily takes it on to come down to visit with us or whatever. But no, before creation, he's spirit. But now forever, he's physical.
Okay, so the taking on of flesh is a eternal reality.
Yes.
Not eternal.
Eternally.
Yeah.
Eternally
is
in the future.
I don't know. What is immortal? I guess what I'm saying.
Think about geometry, because I'm good at geometry.
Okay.
A point and then a line.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a line
arrow,
continually in both directions.
Yeah.
Yeah. A point and then that makes sense. Okay. And then what? Like, let's just get a little. Let's get a little Trinitarian just for fun.
Okay. Let's do it.
So is the second person of the Trinity
the Son of God?
Is he eternally the Son, or does he take on the role of the Son in the incarnation.
Yeah. So one of the things we believe about
This
God,
is very high level theology.
and, and I'm going to speak very elementary because that's about all I understand.
Me too. You don't want to talk about the ontological Trinity?
No, I don't.
Me neither.
We believe God is immutable, meaning he's unchangeable.
Mm-hmm. We talked about that week 1, right?
A little bit.
Okay.
And so God doesn't change. And so that's part of the basis for this. The creeds also talk about Jesus not created, but begotten. Like the Athanasian Creed. This is a creed explaining the Trinity. And,
Athanasius is awesome, by the way.
The Black Dwarf.
That's his nickname.
And so not created, but begotten. Now, if you remember from last week, I talked about, I think it was last week, when Peter says that you are the Son of God. A son is someone of the same essence as the Father, right? And so, in the same way that
not a similar essence.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know what you mean.
Well, so a big split in the Nicene Creed is Jesus homoousios with the Father, the same substance, or homoiousios, of a similar substance as the Father. And that was a big debate. And this is I just learned this. It's the same word, almost identically in Greek, except for the I, which is the iota. Mm-hmm. And it's where we get the phrase, I don't want like an iota of this or whatever. It's like, I don't want an iota of, which means I don't even want a little bit. It comes from this conversation, this fight about the Nicene Creed, and about if Jesus and the Father are the same substance or a similar substance. The difference is literally one iota between homoousios and homoiousios.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And so just funny that English phrase we use a lot. It's like, I don't want an iota of attitude out of you or whatever. It's from this like ancient Greek controversy.
Yeah, I would say of the same.
Yeah, I mean that's orthodox.
But the thing that was
Arius would say homoiousios, and he was a heretic.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Jews believe that a son is of the same stuff as his father, right? Or even when they say, who is Jesus, right? Oh, he's Jeremiah, he's Ezekiel, or whatever. That he's in the same line of the prophets, right? He's in the same substance of that prophet, right? And that same kind of tradition of him. And so to say that Jesus is begotten of the Father isn't to say he was created, but rather he is of the same stuff, to the same essence. So what was your original question?
Was he eternally the Son?
So all that to say, I would say yes. Father, Son, Spirit, eternally, those are their personified, or their persons, their personhoods. That's their,
and that's how the Bible refers to the second person of the Trinity largely is the Son.
Yeah. And so that's who they've always been, and that's who they present themselves to us to be. And so we have no reason to think otherwise. And God does not change. So
what do you think about this? I just heard someone talk about this recently. I thought this was interesting about the Son, the second person of the Trinity, being the Logos, the rationality of God, and that God the Father in his rationality begets the Son, like, because he is the second person of the Trinity, is the rationality, is not mentality, but the Father, and that the Spirit proceeds from them, is like the personification of their love for each other. That's how I heard someone talk about it recently. But like, because the Logos is the other term we have for the second person of the Trinity. It's this rationale. That not that he's created, but that
he is that which makes sense of all things.
Yeah.
He's the ology.
Yes. That holds all things together.
Yeah.
Right. I think comes from that.
Explains all things.
In Colossians. Yeah. Right. So, not that because there was never a time where the Father was not rational. Therefore, there was always a Logos, a Son. And then there was never a time in which they did not have love for each other. Therefore, there was always a Spirit that proceedeth from them.
Yeah.
So it's all really interesting stuff. And just makes you look at God and go like, wow, like you're better than I
love the phrase, it's talking about the gospel, but you can really just take all of theology, right? It's like theology or the gospel is simple enough for an 8-year-old, but deep enough for an 80-year-old to be mesmerized by, right? And so it's like, we can get the basic levels of all these things, but then like looking at the universe, the vastness of the universe, go, whoo,
yeah,
boy, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think sometimes like when you get to those, boy, I don't know, like is not to say like this doesn't make sense, but to say like, wow, isn't like God is even more amazing than I can even fathom.
Yeah.
And I hope I get to spend the next 60, 70, 80, 50, 40, whatever years of my life, like just thinking about how amazing God is.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that's when it comes to like complicated stuff like this. Like I think conception by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, we get that, we believe that.
Yeah.
But then you start kind of unpeeling some layers. The interworkings of that can become complicated.
Yeah.
And so not to say that should make us question or doubt, but to say that uncovering those things actually makes us revere God's world.
It's
even
something
more.
finite trying to understand something that's infinite. It's always going to struggle.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, any final words, final thoughts?
No questions.
No questions.
Guys, submit me a question.
Give Brent a question. I'm sitting here trying to make them up on the fly. Like, was Jesus always the Son? Was Jesus the S-U-N? No. So send Brent a question because I quit making them up.
That's right. Please.
All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us for the recap. We hope this conversation has encouraged you to keep striving to make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. If you aren't part of our church family, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning. We gather for worship at 10:30 a.m. For more information, you can always go to myfellowship.church. Thanks for listening. Be blessed.